Welcome to the Pregnancy Help Podcast. I'm Christine Grimmett. I'm here with Nafisa Kennedy, the director of Option Line. And Option Line is a 24/7 bilingual pregnancy helpline that provides help for women facing an unplanned pregnancy and connects them with a local pregnancy help organization for continued care. If you'd like to learn more, visit optionline.org or check out the show notes for more information. So Nafisa was recently on the podcast to talk with one of our parent care coordinators from the website prenateldiagnosis.org. So I encourage you to go back and listen to that one after listening to this one today if you haven't, because I think these two episodes combined are going to give a lot of valuable information on how you can better help your clients who are facing a prenatal diagnosis. And in this episode, we've brought on another parent care coordinator to give us another angle of that position and the services that prenateldiagnosis.org provides. So with that, I want to welcome Heidi Martin to our show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you all for having me.
And I can't wait to hear more about your background and the work that you do with these parents that are facing a very difficult situation with their unborn child, and how you support them even through after the child is born. But I want to start by turning things over to Nafisa first to give us an introduction to the website prenateldiagnosis.org. What is this website? How is it developed? And then we'll start into more of Heidi's background.
Thanks, Christine. Parents who have received a prenatal diagnosis for their baby are often presented with abortion almost as a treatment option for the diagnosis. They may even be offered an appointment for the abortion immediately after the diagnosis is shared, while they're still stunned about the news they've just received about their baby. These pregnancies are often wanted and planned for, and it can be shocking, traumatizing, and just a completely upending to their world to get this news, and then also the indication from a medical professional that their baby doesn't have value. So what we find is without a comprehensive network of support, a majority of these parents do end up choosing abortion. However, with the comprehensive network of support, around 80% of families do choose life for their babies. So we recognize an opportunity to strengthen the pregnancy help movement and alternatives to abortion for this unique type of crisis pregnancy. So Heartbeat, Be Not Afraid, Her Plan, and Charlotte Lozier Institute for the last 3 years have been working on an initiative designed to serve these families with that comprehensive network of support, life-affirming support. And that begins with the website. Prenateldiagnosis.org serves to provide information, resources, and a warm, inviting connection to our network of help. So the network of help starts with our 24/7 hotline, which is manned by our Option Line team and live chat. Our hotline team will talk with the parents about some of their initial concerns or questions with the goal of getting them connected with a parent care coordinator for ongoing support throughout their pregnancy and a year after their baby is born. Parent care coordinators really offer phenomenal support to these families, which brings us to Heidi, who works with Journey of a Lifetime. And Heidi, we would just love to hear more about you, your background, and your ministry.
Great. Thanks again for having me. I'm super excited and thankful that the Lord has brought me to this place to be able to serve families. A little bit about myself is I am a nurse with a bachelor's of science in nursing, and I have been practicing for 22 years. 20 of those years were in a level 4 NICU here at a children's hospital in Atlanta. I have 2 kids. I am happily married for now almost 22 years in November. And I too have a medically fragile child who received an adverse diagnosis, not prenatally, but after he was born. And so that landed me both as a NICU nurse and as a mother of a baby in the NICU. So I'm definitely passionate about families who are in this journey of receiving a life-limiting or adverse prenatal diagnosis through that prenatal course, but also as it takes them into the NICU and beyond in life. So obviously my journey as a nurse started in the NICU. And around 2022, I felt the Lord calling me out of the hospital environment, which was a big move for me because I really loved the ICU. I went into nursing for the NICU and I just really saw myself there forever. But a couple years leading up to 2022, the Lord really began to impress ministry on my heart. I didn't know what that looked like, but I knew He was calling me into that. So I exited the hospital system in 2022, and I kind of blindly stepped out of it, knowing the Lord was leading me somewhere, but not where. And there was a couple months of just kind of seeking the Lord and what He was doing. And through a variety of circumstances and prayer, I really sensed the Lord telling me to connect with Daphne Robinson, who is the director of Atlanta Morning Center. And in reaching out to her, literally her first response was, I've been waiting 7 years for this phone call. And she had just always envisioned us partnering in ministry, which is honestly something I did not know, but evidence that the Lord was already going before this. And even then, Daphne and I, as we began to consider partnering, what we envisioned was really me coming in as a nurse within Atlanta Morning Center's clinic. But shortly after that time, Daphne and I met Tracy Windsor, co-founder of Be Not Afraid. And that's when the Lord kind of lifted the veil and showed us what we were doing. And Daphne and I took the very first training that Tracy was offering for the model of care, Be Not Afraid. And things just kind of exploded from that point on in developing Atlanta Morning Center Journey of a Lifetime program that follows that Be Not Afraid model of care. And so our mission for Journey of a Lifetime is really that we are there to offer parents who have received an adverse prenatal diagnosis the care of compassionate and trauma-informed nurses and medical professionals who provide free prenatal through postnatal support in the love of Jesus Christ through prayers and financial support from the local church. And then this support to the parents includes things like medical advocacy, prenatal diagnosis education, grief, loss, and trauma-informed care, pastoral care, postnatal NICU support, and acting as a liaison with medical specialists. And then we say our vision statement is that we celebrate the life of a child, no matter the limitations of that life or the length of the infant's days. And we seek to work alongside the family to carry the infant to a life-affirming birth outcome up to 37 weeks or beyond. And really important in that is that we seek to give the parent permission to parent. And even when the medical community insists parents terminate the pregnancy, we are there to try to give them their voice back and let them be the parent.
Mm-hmm. That's so important, giving them their voice back. Just to back up to your training with Be Not Afraid, I'm really interested in what that looked like for you. What does it look like to train to be a parent care coordinator?
Yeah, I think it's actually really easy, but also very unique and thorough. And it has a unique focus on trauma-informed care, which I think is really what sets us apart in the model of care that we provide. Logistically, what it comes down to is Daphne and I took a live session training. Now things have moved toward fully online training, which involves 5 sessions, which when you break it down is probably a total of 14 to 16 hours of recorded content. But within that is additional resources that you read and things that you work through, as well as 4 recommended books that just help you kind of connect if you haven't worked with families going through this in the past to better understand what they're going through. I can go in a little bit deeper into what the PCC does once trained.
Yeah, actually, I was just going to ask if you might share a little bit with us about BNA's model of care. I think that would be really interesting for our listeners.
Yeah, definitely. So, what's great about the model of care is that it's it is trauma informed in that it seeks to provide safety and connection and companionship for a family who has received a life limiting diagnosis. So, really, that is a big focus of it. Additionally, some of the basic things that a PCC is going to be doing in the care that they provide kind of falls under that perinatal palliative care. And I want to clarify, when I use the term palliative care, that's not comfort care. They've often become intertwined in the medical community, but palliative care is really concurrent care. It's saying we're focusing on the quality of life while treating the life, recognizing that the life might be shortened, and so that quality is emphasized, but you're treating all along, and you can veer off to comfort care if the baby's life and needs are indicating that that's the pathway that the baby is going to need. So there's a lot of focus on perinatal palliative care, where we want to maximize that quality of life and comfort for the newborn. And within that includes providing decision making through consultation for the family members, particularly the mom and the dad. Encouraging an environment that the parents can process their emotions and discuss their values and their wishes and their desires for their family moving forward and for their baby. Validating the parents' concerns, building trust with the family. If they don't have your trust, they're not going to open up and share their needs and their desires and their wishes. And as I spoke earlier about supporting their voice as the parents to this child and giving them the permission to parent, and facilitating communication between the family and the medical community, so that the medical community is not leading or trying to write this story, but the parents are part of the story and writing this story for their family. Additionally, as a PCC, you're helping the family to write up a birth plan. You are not submitting a formulated birth plan to them. You may give them some examples of birth plans that other families have used. But I always tell them, this is your birth plan. This is your story based off of what you've expressed so far as predominant wishes and desires that need to be met for you guys to be at peace with however this plays out. Here's how you can develop your birth plan and what you can write in it. And there really are no limitations. Again, this is their story. So I want them to be as specific as they want to be. And this is something that is then distributed to everyone on their medical team. Again, we also, as a PCC, will offer that trauma-informed approach, which is really, again, where this model of care sets itself apart from the others. With that trauma-informed approach, you are seeking to provide this family safety and connection. When they can feel safe and connected, then they are not going to find themselves in that fight or flight state where they cannot effectively make decisions because they're simply operating out of fear. And when a family is offered to terminate or encouraged to make a decision with lack of information while they are in fight or flight, they are very vulnerable to doing something that they will regret or that they wouldn't have chosen to do because they were simply trying to survive in that moment and they weren't able to fully think through the process. So when we can keep them in a safe place, they're able to work through informing themselves and educating themselves on decisions that need to be made now and in the future to come with their child, so that what they want for their child and for themselves are things that they can have happen and that they can have peace about moving forward. So that is a really, really big part of what we're doing. Additionally, a PCC offers grief and pastoral support. So there's training on recognizing grief and how to support families through grief. Personally, for me, in my journey as a NICU nurse for 4 years in a high intensity NICU, I walked this journey with more families than I can honestly count. And I recognize now that that was a training that the Lord provided me. And I was getting that kind of grief and loss training there. And so that is also something that we train PCCs in, how to just walk alongside somebody who is grieving, how to help them recognize their grief, and how to direct them to the resources and support to help them through grief. Obviously, we offer prenatal diagnosis education and NICU education. If you're a nurse or a medical professional operating as a PCC, there may be a wealth of information and education that you already have that you can disperse to the family. But if medical is not your background, there are a wealth of resources online and a wealth of people in the community that you can connect and collaborate with and connect these families to help educate them so that they can be informed in their decisions. Journey of a Lifetime specifically will advance our care and our training to include NICU support, as that is my personal passion. That is very encompassing in and of itself and what that looks like. And then we also have to recognize that with a life-limiting diagnosis, lifetime can be short. And so there is training on bereavement support and connecting with resources in the community prenatally, so that we're prepared at the time of birth if they're needed, but even postnatally when the time comes, to support the family through that time of grief and loss and still allow this to be a beautiful experience for them.
That's awesome. I just love how your care really focuses on the needs of not just your expectant mom, but the entire family, and really making sure that they're getting the care that they desire. I love that about the parent care coordinators that we work with, and I think you guys are doing such an amazing job.
Thank you.
Now, thanks for sharing about what is entailed in the work of a parent care coordinator or palliative care coordinator. Since you've been in your role, can you tell us about some of the challenges that you've experienced or some of the highlights, maybe with the families that you've served?
Yeah, definitely. I think starting with highlights, it's been beautiful to kind of build these relationships with these parents and step into such intimate and personal times in their life, and to really see that when you offer them that sacred listening, as Zoe Endicott calls it, and give them the time to just express themselves and what they're going through, the way in which they open up to you. And it can lead to, really deep, intimate conversations. And a couple ways in which I've personally been blessed is after kind of building that connection with a couple of mothers, once they got to a point in their pregnancy where scans started to reveal some very concerning information about the future of the pregnancy, and the mothers were having to make decisions quickly and refer back to their birth plans that we had developed. I was one of the first people that these mothers called. They're consulting with all of these other people on the medical team, and they have family members involved, but they called me, which was quite impactful and humbling, honestly, that they had felt such a level of trust with me, and safety with me, that when they needed to make this decision, they looked to me for guidance. Obviously, we are not offering medical advice. We are simply saying, hey, this is what you've expressed are your needs. These are the options before you. Here's the information that we've discussed to help you in making these decisions. If they are feeling that the information that is being told to them might be inaccurate and they're needing like a second opinion, I can connect them with another medical person who can confirm or disagree with maybe what the medical team is saying and helping them make their decision. But ultimately, that has been a highlight for me, that these mothers have valued the service that has been provided to them and have felt that safe that they came to me first and knew that if they talked through what the medical team was sharing with me, that together we could help direct them to the decision that they made. And in both of those situations, it was reminding the mothers in particular, but the fathers were present too, but reminding the mother in particular what she had said and saying, okay, well, if you remember, you vocalized multiple times that this was your desire, this was your goal. And so what do we need to do to make that happen? You know, that will lead you to your decision. And coming back to it, those mothers have expressed that that was just tremendously helpful for them to be able to reach out and connect with me and talk things through so that they could have that decision and made in peace and not regret the decision that they made, because it was something that they wanted to do, and it wasn't a moral injury for them because it was in line with their morals. They weren't influenced by a medical team or by any other person. They were walking out the path that they wanted for their family and for their baby. So that was definitely a highlight for me. And I think another highlight for me, just as a medical professional, has been how these families have invited me to the medical table. So I've had several different consultations with the entire medical team that was working with the family, where the family brought me in on a Zoom meeting, and we have the neonatologist, the OB, the MFM, the child life specialist, and cardiology, you name it, all of them sitting there at the table in the Zoom meeting, and they brought me in. And the excitement and willingness from the medical team to have me there, as they recognize that I was part of this journey with the family before many of them came into the picture. And they're very open and receptive to my role in supporting this family. And all of them pretty unanimously have been just kind of shocked by the presentation of the birth plans from the parents and the clarity of the wishes that have been expressed by the parents. And they've been super supportive of it. So that's been a personal highlight as well, that the medical community is open to our role and service to these families. And then I can't not speak into the fact that I'm operating in a missional way. I'm advancing God's kingdom. And I see that in every single one of the families that I work with, that I try to pray continually over these families, pray before I go into doing an intake with these families, and let the Lord really lead my words with them and my interactions with them. And just so many times already, I have seen him give personal words of encouragement to both me and the family, lead us to specific books or certain encounters that they had where the family had this encounter and I had a separate encounter, and they come together and affirm something that the Lord's saying. I'll give an example of that. One of the very first clients that we had, she lost her baby after a couple hours of life. So she did have some beautiful time with him. She had a birth plan established and everything, and all of her wishes were essentially fulfilled. And in the memorial service that she had for her baby, she had chosen a song, and it was called "I Will Carry You." And she did not realize that I had just sent some resources to her by mail, one of which was a book entitled "I Will Carry You." Obviously, neither of us knew that connection until we vocalized it, but it just cemented the fingerprint of the Lord on their journey, and that he had gone before them, and that he was currently with them and would help them through their grief. And so I've had many situations like that in which the Lord has done something like that. And that has been an absolute blessing to me, humbling to me that I get to be a vessel for his glory, and to see the impact that it makes in the lives of these parents as well. And then I would say some of the biggest challenges really is that PCCs are, what we do is unique, and there's not a lot of us out there right now. And so for us personally at Journey of a Lifetime, we are covering all of the Southeast essentially. That's a lot. So getting the awareness of this model of care out there, getting people trained in this model of care, I think is a necessary thing, because the need is most definitely in there in the community, and we can only do so much. So we need more people to be able to offer this support to all the other states and all the other people that are in need of this. And then there's also not a lot of vetting of services for it in the pro-life community too. So that's definitely a challenge as well.
Wow. I definitely sympathize with that idea that we need more. So what would be your best advice, Heidi, for someone who wants to get involved but isn't sure where to start?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I have, I think, a couple thoughts to that. We think about the fact that 80% of parents will carry to term if offered support. So for someone who's thinking about this, just remember that you could be saving someone from an abortion who you wouldn't have thought would be abortion minded, but given the situation might be abortion vulnerable. So you stepping into serving in a PCC role can be life-saving, not just for the baby, but for the mother, the father, and the entire family unit. When you step in to that diagnosis with the family and say, hey, we can support you as you carry to term and to life, even if it's an hour or a few minutes or 14 years that they have with that child, it's beautiful for them, because they wanted this child and they were able to see their child to life. And that means so much to them. And so to be able to step in and be a part of that journey with families is a blessing. So I would encourage someone who's thinking about it to definitely take in that mindset that you're saving not just one life, but multiple lives and entire family units as they move forward. If you're a nurse, at the core of nursing is compassion. And so you can take that compassion that probably drove you to become a nurse. I know it very much did for me, and apply it here. You may not be utilizing the clinical physical skills per se, like you would in a hospital environment, but in every other way, you are using your nursing skills that you've been trained to do. And I think it was Mary Coughlin, who's really big in the trauma-informed world, said that compassion is viewed by some as nursing's most precious asset. And so take that asset that you have as a nurse and share your compassion with people who desperately are needing it. They're not getting it when they get that diagnosis. They're getting a very biased picture from an oftentimes not accurate picture from the medical community, and they need someone to step in and love them and have compassion for them and help them get their voice back. And then more concretely, reach out to Be Not Afraid and sign up to take their PCC training and become trauma informed. As well, Atlanta Morning Center will begin to branch out training for others outside of our organization in the near future. We're not there yet, but that is coming down the pipeline. But start off by getting that training done. You just go to benotafraid.net and click on their training, and it'll walk you through that. Like I said, we cover the Southeast, but there are states in the West that are not being covered that are definitely in need of PCCs. And then if you feel like, well, I can't do any of those things, we are Journey of a Lifetime is fully supported by donations. So you can also give financially to support this work that's being done. And then probably most importantly, pray for us because all of this doesn't happen. And I think I've hopefully made clear would not have happened without the Lord's leading in the very first place. So we need his continual leadership and guidance in what we do. And I'll just add to that really quick. As I was praying, coming into this podcast last night, the Lord led me to a beautiful verse that I guess I just really hadn't stumbled on or really thought of it in this light. So I'm going to pull it up and just read it to you guys. But it was Psalm 78, 52 to 53. And it says, "Then he led out his people like sheep and guided them in the wilderness like a flock. He led them in safety so that they were not afraid." And that really struck me because ultimately we want to point all of these families to the Lord because that is the ultimate safe place in his presence. And that trauma-informed approach that we've talked about is about providing that safety and connection. But at the heart of what we do is to lead people to Christ. And he is where they're ultimately going to be safe and secure. So we are following the Be Not Afraid model of care, but ultimately based off of the scripture, we're just following God's model of care and leadership.
Amen. I love that, Heidi. Thank you so much for sharing that scripture.
Of course.
I have one last question for you, and that is there anything that has stuck with you, either during your training for the parent care coordinator work or in your experience, as something that everyone needs to know about these families or about how to help them?
Yeah. Families that are going through this had a story before they came into this moment. And life doesn't stop for them in this moment. They have to continue on with whatever's going on in their life. They might have a 3-year-old at home too, another child. They might be working a full-time job. And they're trying to balance all of this while also cope with and accept this diagnosis that many recognize is life-changing for them. The future that they had envisioned ahead for themselves as family and also for this child suddenly looks different. And if you're not directly in that story with them, it's very easy to not recognize that all of that is going on. And so I want people to be aware of that and just offer to be present with families during this time that, if we're not talking about being a PCC, if you have a relative or you have a friend that's going through this, that's received a life-limiting diagnosis, be there for them. And you don't necessarily need to say something, but your presence and your time are so critical. And again, being that sacred listener, like I mentioned, Zoe Endicott said, for them, when many people are going to kind of scatter and create an isolating environment for the family, be that person that doesn't do that, that steps in and says, okay, I know I don't have the words to say, but I'm here for you. I will be present with you, even if that presence is 2 hours of silence. And I will always be an ear to listen to what you need to say. That is so impactful for families going through this. And I can speak to it personally. When we received the diagnosis for my son, it's very easy to, as a person going through that, to just isolate yourself because you're so overwhelmed and you're just trying to cope with everything. And for people in your life to just kind of back off because they don't know what to do, not because they don't care. But that isolation can just become its own challenge. So that would be my encouragement, is to step in as a listener, step in as a physical presence, and love them that way.
That is great advice. Thank you so much, Heidi, for being here. And, maybe we have some listeners who aren't ready to take on parent care coordinator training. But I do want to mention that Be Not Afraid also has first responder training. So for those who work in a pregnancy help organization of some sort, who want to be prepared for when a family with a diagnosis walks through the doors, definitely still contact Be Not Afraid. And then don't forget that prenataldiagnosis.org is always there as a resource, and you are welcome to share that with your clients. I'll go ahead and hand it back over to Christine.
All right. Thanks, Nafisa. And thank you, Heidi. It was such a pleasure to have you both on today. And I want to mention that we've done a handful of other episodes in the past. I believe it was a year ago, and we had a little mini series on prenatal diagnosis on the website initiative and some of the information behind that. And so these are all great resources if you're new to the idea of working with parents who are facing a prenatal diagnosis, and maybe that's kind of unfamiliar territory for you. I think that's a great place to start, because there is training, there is information, and there's support available for you, as maybe if our listeners are involved in pregnancy help organizations already, or if you're just a supporter and you want to know for personal reasons, a family or friend who is in need of this sort of care. And so there's a lot out there. So I will be linking to a handful of things in the show notes. So be sure to check those out. Also subscribe to the podcast so that we keep you updated on the latest happening in the pregnancy help community. And with that, I wish all of our listeners a wonderful rest of your day. And thanks for listening to this episode of the Pregnancy Help Podcast.